These Bermuda Bowl players went down in their making game. Did they misplay the hand, or was it just a case of bad luck? Imagine you're playing in the semi-finals of the Bermuda Bowl and you are declaring this 4 hearts contract. This was actually a hand from the last segment of the semi-finals between Sweden and Denmark. On this table, North opened 2 hearts and South raised to 4 hearts, which then got passed out. East then led the 10 of clubs. Plan your play. So what this Swedish declarer did was to win with the ace and then catch the ace and king of spades, pitching a club. And then he tried to finesse a heart, losing to East king. Now East returned a low diamond and West returned another low diamond to East ace, and then East returned the 10 of diamonds. Now declarer tried to ruff this with the 9, but unfortunately got over ruffed by West 10 and went 1 down. On the other table, so okay, the Vugraph was wrong, but I've been told by a friend who watched the Vugraph that East led a club. Now, the same thing happened. Declarer won this with the ace and then pitched a club on the spade. And then finesse a heart, which lost to East king. And then now East cashed the ace of diamonds and then played another diamond to West king. And then West returned a spade. Declarer tanked for a bit and then won this with the ace and then played a low heart out. When East played the 2, Declarer decided to insert the 9 and this lost to West 10, also going 1 down for a push board. Now, as you can see from the commentators' comments, so they were saying like, oh, okay, we can see that the ace of hearts and the heart makes 10 easy tricks, but if Declarer finesses, things might get complicated. And also, they don't know how sure East can be about the club position. And this wasn't captured, I guess, because of the Vugraph error. But on the other table, someone commented that North could or maybe should have played the ace of heart and another heart. So let's break this hand down. So let's go to the point where East returned the 10 of diamonds. At this point, if Declarer had played the jack of hearts instead, Declarer would have made. So was it right to ruff with the 9? Well, what are the possible heart holdings? If you ruff with the 9, you win when West has 2 or nothing left, and if you ruff with the jack, you win when West holds a 2, 10-2 or just a 10 left. So at first glance, it seems like it is better to play the jack. But note that after winning the jack, you have to decide what to do. So if you want to catch 10-2, then you have to finesse West. And if you choose to play for singleton 2, then you have to play for the drop. So this is still 50%. So it's not 3 cases, it's not even 2.5 because you have the time where you have to finesse. It's 2 cases only. But it's not just that. First of all, some holdings are more likely than others. So if West started with just the 8, then West is always playing the 8. If West started with 10 and 8, then West is also always playing the 8. If West started with 8-2, then both pips are smaller than dummies, Jack 9 remaining. So it doesn't make a difference what West plays. Therefore, West may play 8 half the time and 2 the other half the time. So restricted choice would apply here, given that we have seen the 8. So basically, if West started with 8-2, like when you compare the odds of West holding 8-2 versus just the 8, then it is actually twice as likely that West holds the 8 instead of the 8-2. And if West started with 10-8-2, then technically playing the 8 cost, because now Declarer can actually ruff the jack and finesse him, although that is a kind of very dubious play. And Declarer probably wouldn't do it anyway, but playing the 8 is a strictly inferior play because if West had the ruff, then Declarer was always going to go down anyway, so there's no reason to give Declarer any chance of making. So at this point, if you think that West starting with 10-8-2 is not possible, then these 2 plays are equal. But that is assuming there's a diamond ruff. Now, if we include the possibility that there is no diamond ruff in the first place, then the odds swing very heavily in favor of ruffing with the 9. Note that at this point, East has no other return other than a diamond, as it is obvious from dummy that Declarer is always making with any other return. Could North have started a 3-card club? No, because Declarer would have tried a 3rd spade to pitch a 3rd club. Okay, but what if Declarer was scared of a spade ruff? Well, Declarer can only mitigate the risk of the spade ruff when there's exactly king double turn heart on side. So Declare can only prevent a spade ruff 2 out of 8 of the times, which is 25%, which is inferior to the 36% chance of a 3-3 spade break. Furthermore, Declarer still has extra chances even if spades don't break. For example, if West ruffs the third spade, then North may overruff and still hope for King doubleton onside. So like North would just overruff, then cash the ace, and then can enter the south hand with the jack and continue cashing the spades. So if Declarer had 3-card club, then it is a much more superior play to try to pitch the third club on a spade. Because you see now, if Declarer finesses a heart and it loses, then Declarer is instantly going down. So from Declarer's point of view, it would be better to try to pitch the third club on the spade. So defenders can be sure that there is no club to cash and therefore will always return a diamond. Note that Declarer is not afraid of a spade ruff because Declarer can just overruff in the north hand, so literally no issue. So when considering whether to ruff the jack or the 9, you also need to consider whether there's a diamond ruff, and in this case, it is extremely unlikely that there is a diamond ruff, and Declarer was indeed right to play the 9. Rather unlucky that it got overruffed by the 10 this time. Now, what about the play at the other table? So after ruffing with the ace, should Declarer have finessed the heart? Well, it's about even because both East and West have the same number of vacant spaces, so they are equally likely to hold the 10 of hearts. This is after East has played the second heart. So now we know that East has already played 2 spades, 2 hearts, 2 diamonds, and 2 clubs. So East only has space for 5 more cards, and on the West hand, you know that West started with 4 spades, and then you know that West already played 2 diamonds, so that's 6 cards, and a heart, which is 7, and a club, which is 8. So there are also 5 empty slots in the West hand. So it is equally likely. On the other hand, if after ruffing the spade with the ace, East plays another spade, and then now Declarer plays another heart out and East plays the 2, then there are only 5 vacant spaces in the East hand, but on the West hand, there'll be 6 because now West only has 3-card spade and has only played 1 heart, 2 diamonds, and a club. Whereas, if East followed suit to the spade, then East wouldn't have pitched a club. So there's still the same number of vacant spaces. So in that case, it would have been better to play for the drop because West is now more likely to hold the 10. So even though it's about equal, there is some nuance, like even though it's about equal, using vacant spaces, it's actually still more likely for East to hold the 10 of hearts if we just zoom out a bit and think about how likely the whole hand is. So if East started with doubleton spade and King 3-card heart, then East had 8 cards in the minors. Whereas if East only had doubleton heart, then East must have 9 cards in the minors. And as a whole, it's just more likely that East would have 8 cards in the minors than 9 cards in the minors. So Declarer was actually right to finesse the 9. Now, what if we rewind a bit more to the point where Declarer ruffed the ace? Should Declarer have ruffed the spade with the ace? Could Declarer have ruffed the 7? So if East started with doubleton spade, then ruffing with the ace, with the intent to finesse hearts later, if East shows out, which is about 50%, and a bit more if East doesn't show out, it works when East has the 10 or 10-2 remaining. So that's 2 cases. And ruffing the 7 works when East has 2 or nothing left. So that's also 2 cases. But if East has nothing left in hearts, which means that West originally started with 10-8 small, then, and West played the 8 on the first heart, then this is actually an objectively wrong play because now Declarer can make their contract by playing the 7, which I'll explain later that if West plays the 8 on trick 1, then it's actually better for North to win with the 7 and therefore make the contract. Whereas if West played the 2, then it's actually better for Declarer to ruff with the ace because now the 7 might lose to both the 8 and the 10. Whereas if West plays the 8, then the 7 can only lose to the 10. We'll talk more about that later. So if you assume that West can't have 10-8 too, because that's a misplay, and when West only holds the 8, West will always play the 8. If West holds 10-8, then based on this dummy, West is always playing the 8 as well. So these are like full cases. But what if West has 8 too? So this would be similar to before. It is kind of inconsequential whether West plays the 8 or 2, at least in terms of legit defense. But like I mentioned just now, there is a difference. If we assume that West plays the 8 and the 2 half the time each when holding 8-2, like I mentioned before, because the 8 and 2 won't win anything in this case, then for every 2 times that West has a 10, there are 3 times that East has a 10. So it seems better to ruff the ace and then finesse the 10 later. But that is assuming there's a spade ruff, which is not true. So like the previous case, like regarding the diamonds, in this case, West always returns a spade if they can. So the only time West doesn't return a spade is if West only had double turn spade, because there is no point in returning anything else. So you might as well put Declarer to a guess. It is always good to make opponents sweat a bit in a knockout match, because West has already played a spade and there is only one other spade left. Then if we treat all the spades as spot cards, then there are 6 choose ways of spades being 3-3, which is 20, and 6 choose 4, which is 15 ways for spades to be 4-2, with specifically West having 4. This is a common misconception, like people say, oh, like, 4-2 breaks are more common than 3-3 breaks, but that is 4-2 either way. Like if it's 4 with one side, then it is less common than 3-3, okay? So playing the 7 always works 4 out of 7 of the time when spades break, plus 40% of the remainder when East can't overruff. That 40% is like, because every 2 times West has a 10, then there are 3 times that East has the 10. So if the spade can be rough, then East can overruff 60% of the time. So in total, it works 5.2 out of 7 of the time. Don't mind the funny fractions, because now I'm working in base 7, right? Okay, anyway, on the other hand, playing the ace only works 60% of the time when East holds a 10. So if we convert this to out 7, then that's 4.2. So it is better to ruff with the 7. However, this option to ruff the 7 is only available because West played the 8. If West played the 2 instead, then Declarer only gains playing the 7 when there is no ruff, which is 4 of the 7 of the time. And here we know that it's impossible for West to have started with 10-8-2, so it's really 4 out of 7 of the time. Like every time there is a spade ruff, East can over ruff the 7. The alternative would be to ruff the ace and then try to get the hearts right later. And finessing the 10 works when West started with 8 or 8-2, and playing for the drop works when West started with 10-8 or 8-2. And just now we established that it doesn't make sense for Declarer to hold 10-8-2. So if West plays the 8 or 2 like half the time each when holding both, then like before, there is a 60% chance that Declarer will make their contract by playing the ace and then finessing the heart later, which is higher than the 4 out of 7 that we calculated earlier for playing the 7. Note that this 60%, right, is different from the 50% which I said just now for like after the 2 has appeared, like whether Declarer should play the 9 or the jack. And this is because we are still in the planning stage and have not yet seen the 2 from East. So it's like if this happens, then what will we do? Like you don't know that the 2 is going to come out later. Until it does, of course. Like after ruffing the ace, you could play a small heart over and maybe East will just turn out with the 10 and problem solved, right? So if West started with 8-2 of hearts and East started with double turn spade, then West would do very well to play the 8 instead of the 2 to convince Declarer to ruff the 7 later on instead of ruffing with the ace. So this makes the play of the 8 and 2 not so random anymore and definitely not 50%. So if we take it to extreme and say that West will play the 8 all the time, then when West plays the 8, ruffing with the 7 works 5 out of 7 of the time, while playing the ace works 2/3 of the time. So it is still better to play the 7. But if West has an 8-2 and always plays the 8 when there's an 8-2, which by definition won't happen, right? But if say that epsilon amount of time where West plays a 2 happens, then declarer would win by ruffling the ace only half the time, because now West holding 8-2 is an impossibility. So it's actually equal whether West has just the 8 or the 10-8. Like if West always plays the 8 from 8-2 and the 2 is played, then East now can't have just King 10. So East can only have King 8 or King 10-8, which are equally likely. Because if West holds 10-2, West is always playing the 2. And if West holds just a 2, then West also always playing the 2. So you can't tell, and that would be about a 50% guess. So it is better to just hope that there is no spade over ruff. So if you always play the 8 from 8-2, then it becomes better for declarer to ruff the 7. So it doesn't make a difference whether you play the 8 or 2 anymore. So in reality, West would play the 8 more often than the 2, but not all the time. So in game theory, this would be called a mixed strategy. And if we were to do the math, then what we're looking for is like the 4 out of 7 of the no spade ruff is equal to 1 plus P divided by 2 plus P. So where P is the probability of the 2 being played when West holds 8-2. So if we solve for P, then we get P is 1/3 of the time. So if we go back to the best play, given the defense, once the 8 has been played, so this happens 2/3 of the time when West has 8-2, then ruffing with the 7 works 4/7 plus 3/8 of the remainder, because now there is a 3:5 ratio. 2 cases of 8-2 once the 8 has been played, and 3 cases of like 10-8 or just 8 with West. Okay, so I've definitely blabbered, but let me assure you that all of this is relevant in figuring out the best play, because like now we know that, you know, like West can't have 10-8-2, you know, West with 8-2 would play the 8 2/3 of the time, right? Yeah, so first of all, it is universally right to play a heart. Not playing a heart subjects you to a spade ruff, which like previously we calculated is 73.2% of the time, and before playing any hearts, you can't top this number. So you're capped at 73.2% if you decide not to play hearts first. Okay, so let's start with the suggestion to play a heart to the ace. So if we play a heart to an ace, then given that the 8 has appeared, there are a few possible West holdings in hearts. So the first is King 10-8-2, which is a bit weird that West would play the 8. But I think if West really had King 10-8-2, then your only chance of making this contract is to guess the diamonds right, and then you ruff the third diamond to finesse West again. But that doesn't make sense, because if they really had this hand, then they would have played the 2, right? And the fact that they play the 8 means that you're not going to be able to ruff the diamond, because like there's no reason to play the 8. It just doesn't make sense, okay? Like, because if they had King 10-8-2, yeah, it just doesn't make sense, okay? So you're always going to go down. No reason to play this way, even though it always goes down if they had the hand for it. But let's just exclude this possibility and completely ignore this case. The second hand they can have is King 8-2, which is also a bit odd that they'll play the 8. But you will make anyway if you just play towards the ace. And let's for now just say that there's equal restricted choice between the 8 and the 2. So this has half the chance of other hands in terms of frequency, because the other half of the time you have observed the 2 appearing after the 6 was played. 10-8-2, this is not possible like we mentioned before. If they have King 10-8, you go down. You just can't escape the 2 diamond losers and the 2 heart losers. If they have King 8, you make 10-8, you make 8-2, you make, and 8, you make. So by playing to the ace, so all of these weigh fully except for like 8-2, which you observe the 8 2/3 of the time, and King 8-2, which you observe the 8 half the time. So if you take all this into account and ignore the case of King 10-8-2 onside, then we make 25 out of 31 of the time, which is 80.6%. Okay, so what about declarer's play to the queen? Like, there is no other reasonable play. If we lose to the king, then we make the Seni 3.2% of the time if they play on spades, but only if they have a third spade. We assume that West can always get in, cause East didn't need dimes, so West can, as long as West has a third spade, then we are subject to this Seni 3.2% because of the spade guess. So how often does West have a third spade? So we previously said there's 15 ways for West to have 4 spades and 20 ways to have 3 spades. So likewise, there's 15 ways for West to have 2 spades only. So the only time West doesn't have a third spade is when they have 2 spades, which is 30% of the time. So if East West wanted to, they can cause this spade situation 70% of the time. Okay, but remember the diamond situation just now. If there really is a diamond rough, then declarer has a 50% chance of getting it wrong. So basically, if there is a diamond rough, and here in this case, it has to be West who can rough, right? We need West to hold the 10, because if East holds the 10, then even though there's a diamond rough, then it's still making, like, declarer's best play is a 9. So how often does West have a diamond rough? Well, there are 7 diamonds outstanding. So there's 2 power of 7, which is 1 to 8 ways to arrange the diamonds. But if we exclude the possibility of East having both the ace and the king, then you have to cut like 1/4 of those hands. So there's only 96 ways remaining. Okay, so that's a total number of ways to get the diamonds. But the chance of West having a diamond rough is only when West has honor double turn. How many ways are there to have honor double turn? Well, there's 2 honors, so that's 2 times 5 spot cards. So that would be 5 times 2, which is 10 ways. There's also the possibility of West having the ace and king, or king or ace singleton, but those would require entry into the East hand to get the rough. So there are 10 ways which they can get the diamond rough immediately, and then other than that, they would still have to rely on the spades first. So if you lose to the king, here's what will happen. 10 out of these 96 of the time, there is a real diamond rough. So West has the 10 of hearts half the time, and declarer on the right play will get this wrong. So you go down 5 out of 96 of the time. 3/6 of the time, West has a singleton, diamond honor, or ace king stiff of diamonds, and defenders need to cash West's honors first before going for the spade rough to give West the diamond rough. So this is essentially like the spade rough situation. Otherwise, defenders will go for the spade rough if possible, and this happens 70% of the time. And like we mentioned earlier, this makes 73.2% of the time. If West started with double turn spade, then defenders can't go for the spade rough. So defenders would go for the diamond rough. And the point is to make it still right for declarer to play the 9 of hearts when put to the test, right? And this only happens 30% of the remainder. So there are 13 cases where there's a real diamond rough, but like 30% of the remainder is 24.9 cases. So it is still much better to rough with the 9 instead of the jack. So if we lose to the king, which is basically when West started with 8, 8-2 or 10-8, and 8-2 is worth like 2/3 a so-called instance only, then we lose to the king 16 out of 31 of the time. And during this 16 out of 31 of the time, we go down 5 out of 96 of the time, plus 70% times 26.8% of the remainder. So we go down about 23% of the time, and we make the remaining 77% of the time. So if we lose to the king, we still make 77% of the time, which is not too much lower than the 80.6%. So this might be a better play. Okay, so what if you win with the queen? What are you going to do next? So once again, let's just ignore the king 10-8-2 onside, because it's supposed to go down, and I mean, we are just ignoring it everywhere, okay? So let's say your strategy is in general to cash the ace, but if East plays a 10, right, then actually you are probably better off exiting a small hut, because even if there's a dime ruff, we can now ruff high and North's jack will be good. This happens when West started with king a2, which is 3 out of 31 of the time. Also possibly 10-2, although the play doesn't make sense. Although I guess maybe they might, because if your plan is to catch the ace, then by force carding, they allowed themselves to take one hard trick. So yeah, that's one in my guess. Regardless whether it's a force card or not, we make. Yeah, and if we catch the ace and the king falls, which is when the 10-2 is a false card, then we also make. So this happens 6 out of 31 of the time. Otherwise, if West started with king 10-8, which happens 6 out of 31 of the time, then we have to hope for one of the following diamond suit combinations. So East can have 10 3 card, which is 6 layouts, because there's, if you exclude the honors and the 10, then there's 4 pips, so it's 4 choose 2, which is 6. East can also have honor 10 small, which is 8 layouts, 10 small, which is 4 layouts, or honor 10 double turn, which is only 2 layouts. So there's only 20 out of 96 of the cases where you make. So when the queen holds, we make 68.33% of the time, which doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense that you make less often than when the queen doesn't hold, right? There's something wrong. So there has to be something better. And all in all, if we follow this plan, then we only make our contract 72.8% of the time, which is worse than playing the first hard to the ace. So if we don't intend to catch the ace, then what else can we do? We could play dimes. Say we finesse dimes. If the dime finesse works and we lose to an honor with West, then we have pretty much made our contract. West can't return a heart. If they return a club, we ruff it and play another diamond. We would then be able to ruff the third diamond high and draw trumps. Then we only lose 2 diamonds and a heart. Or maybe no hearts if West started with king double turn heart. The only time we go down is when they overruff us in spades and then navigate a diamond ruff. So they have to ruff the spade first, cause like, let's say East ruffs with a 10 and then now they can get the diamond, and like we can't catch the ace. Like West can overruff the whatever with whatever we ruff in the south hand with the king. So that's how we'll go down. That, or East started with king 10-2 of hearts and West has the ace king of diamonds and East managed to duck the queen, which well done to them. But also, if East had just won with the king and then like they navigated the spade ruff because that's necessary for East to ruff, then Declara's best play would have been to ruff the 7 when the spade ruff came back. So Declara would have gone down anyway. So let's kind of just ignore that and just assume you need both the spade and diamond ruff for that to happen. Now, what if our diamond finesse loses to a 10 with West? Now, once again, West can't return a heart. We win whatever return and play another diamond. So if East wins, you're not scared of any return. If West wins, then once again, we are only scared of a spade return. And even then, even if East ruffs the spade return, whatever East returns, we can now just draw trumps and enjoy the spades in the south hand. But if East returns a diamond, we can ruff. And unless West overruffs, which is like just now, right? Like we need both the spade and diamond ruff to happen before we go down. All is good. But let's say if East doesn't overruff the spade, or West returns a club and we just ruff it, then what we should do next is to catch the ace of hearts. And if the king falls, great, we make our contract. If the king doesn't fall, then we try to ruff a diamond. Now, the only time we go down is if West can overruff this diamond. So if West can overruff this diamond, then West can just return the club and we are going to lose another diamond. So we'll lose 3 diamonds and 1 heart, like from the overruff. Anything else, you can just, once we manage to ruff the third diamond in the south hand, we can just play a spade and West can ruff, West can don't ruff. It doesn't matter. We already made our contract. Okay, lastly, if we don't lose to an honor with West, if we don't lose to a 10 with West, then we lose to something with East, right? I mean, obviously we don't win with the 9. If we do, great, we already make our contract. If we lose to East, then East just has no good return and we always make our contract. I mean, we are excluding the double ruff situation, which we already said we are going down. So if we play on diamonds after winning the Queen of Hearts, then how often do we make? So we always go down when there is both a spade and diamond ruff. So for this, we count 13 out of 96 because if there's a spade ruff, then like you count the ace king and the singleton ace and king as well on top of the honor pip double turn. But then you also need the spade ruff. So it's 13 out of 96 times 15 out of 50. And half the time when there is a double ruff, East may not be able to overruff because East doesn't have any hearts. For the rest of the time, the 10 is on side 37 times. Basically, you minus 10 from the honor pip double turn and one case of the ace king stiff with west. So that's 37 of the half left. Then, and it is offside 46 times, so you just minus king 10 and ace 10 with west. So for these 37 times where the 10 is on side, we always make. For the other 46 layouts, when the 10 is offside, we try to catch the ace of hearts. And when hearts breaks, which is half the time, we make our contract. When hearts don't break, which is the other half the time, we make whenever we successfully ruff the third diamond without getting overruff. Now, remember we already said we are going down whenever we get like both the diamond and spade ruff. So now we only have to count the times where we get overruff in diamonds, but they wouldn't have been able to score the spade overruff, which is very little. If you do the math, then this adds up to about 97% of the time. So 3 out of 31 of the time, when we successfully finesse the king of hearts and the 10 drops from east, we exit a low heart and always make. It could be more when east force cards, but regardless, we always make, okay? And then 12 out of 31 of the time, when the 10 doesn't drop, we make 97% of the time, like we discussed just now. And the other 16 out of 31 of the time, when we lose to the king with east, we make 77% of the time. So overall, we make 86.7% of the time. So actually, these declarers were right to play towards the queen instead of playing towards the ace, which is what the commentators were saying. And I guess that's why they're at the Bermuda Bowl and we are not. You say. This analysis is based on West having the 10-8-2 not being possible. But if the 10-8-2 are possible, then that would increase the chance of the ace working because now the king can drop, and therefore it might be better to catch the ace. And then we have to redo this whole calculation, right? Well, if the 10-8-2 became a possibility, and if by playing the 8 instead of the 2, we somehow managed to change Declarer's best play to become catching the ace, then the king would fall and Declarer would immediately always make their contract. So it is not in defender's interest to force cut in this way, and therefore it is still better to play towards the queen. Okay, so hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit heavy, but also I thought it was pretty interesting, like the mix strategies for when you have 8-2 double turn. I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, so hope you enjoyed this and see you next time. Bye!